Hi, welcome to another edition of Biology in Minute. I'm Miss Feldbush. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about photosynthesis. As the name implies, photosynthesis uses sunlight in order to make things. At its most basic level, the thing that you're making in photosynthesis is sugar or glucose. In order to make that, you need to have sunlight, you need to have carbon dioxide, and you need to have water. And the thing that comes out is oxygen, and that's a waste product. Photosynthesis occurs in all producers. Producers are most commonly plants, that's probably the one that you know, but there are also photosynthetic protists and photosynthetic bacteria. Any of those can carry out the processes of photosynthesis. Here's your most basic overview of photosynthesis. If you know the equation, you've actually got a lot of information. Here's your carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight coming together to make sugar with oxygen as a waste product. And here you can see the same equation using words and using chemical formulas. All of these mean exactly the same thing. In order to really understand photosynthesis, though, we need to go down a little bit deeper and talk about the phases of photosynthesis. There are two main phases that you're responsible for. First, the light-dependent reactions. Those happen in the presence of sunlight. And secondly, the light-independent reactions. And we'll talk about each of these individually. But first, know that water comes in to the light-dependent reactions along with sunlight, and oxygen is produced as a waste product. During the second phase, the light-independent reactions, carbon dioxide comes in and sugars are produced. You're going to need to know the products and the reactants of each phase. Notice all of these things in the middle. These are energy storing compounds that get shuffled back and forth between the two phases. So first, here are the light-dependent reactions. These reactions depend on the presence of sunlight, and when sunlight is present, a very complicated set of reactions happen, but basically the end result of these reactions is that energy gets stored as ATP, and energy gets stored as another energy storing compound that's called NADPH. You can think of these both as batteries. What you're doing during the first step, or the light-dependent reaction, is filling up the batteries and saving some energy for later. Now that you've saved some energy for later, you can carry out the light-independent reactions. You'll hear these called light-independent reactions. You'll hear them called dark reactions. You'll hear them called the Calvin cycle. Unfortunately, each of these three terms gets used independently. But the basic process of the light-independent reactions is called carbon fixation. And carbon fixation means that the CO2s that come in to the Calvin cycle are pasted together one by one in a very complicated series of steps that you don't really need to understand. But if you'll notice, as it goes around this cycle, the thing that's pasting the carbons together are those energy storing compounds that came from the light-dependent reactions. So the energy that you stored earlier is being used along with the CO2 to put the CO2s together one by one, arranging and rearranging them until eventually glucose is produced. I think this is my favorite view of photosynthesis. It sort of does a nice overview of telling you what comes in, the water and the sunlight, to the light reactions, with oxygen produced as a waste product. It shows you the energy storing compounds of ADP and NADPH2 that are shuffled over to the Calvin cycle, or the light-independent reactions, along with carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and the production of sugars. Notice that the light reactions happen within the membranes of the thylakoid inside the chloroplast, and the Calvin cycle happens in the stroma, which is the open space still in the chloroplast but outside of the thylakoid membranes. So if you know the reactants, you know the products, and you know the intermediate energy storing compounds, then you've got the basics of what you'll need to know for photosynthesis.